I know it's hard to show your wounds, but I really think there is an overarching element here to these girls just knowing that showing insecurities, asking Zach for validation, asking him for anything at all is what gets you walked to the car.
Hi everyone, I'm Julie, she's Kelly, and we're here to find love. We're in Bachelor Season 27, Episode 7, and we're back again this week and every week to recap Zach's season. For those of you who don't know us, we're two dating coaches who analyze the relationship psychology and dating themes in reality TV shows, especially The Bachelor. So if you're into this sort of stuff, follow along and join the conversation.
Big update. We just made it to 1,000 subscribers, which we're so excited about. We're so excited that you're all here. We appreciate it so much, and we have so many big plans for this channel. So if you aren't subscribed yet, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. We post videos every week. We are recapping every episode of The Bachelor, but we also cover pop culture.
Movies, TV shows, anything about dating and relationship. That's our bread and butter.
So we are looking at the dating relationship themes and all of this stuff. So if you aren't subscribed, please do. It really, really does help us out a lot. And we're excited to be talking to you. Yeah, thanks.
All right, so let's go into the episode. We're now in Budapest. All girls have had a one-on-one now, so it's all second one-on-one dates. And the very first one is for Kaity, who in his words is a very extra special person. So they have a very cute date walking around the city. They visit some Hungarian stands. They write love letters. Very cute, simple. We move into the evening portion of the date, which is when Kaity starts to open up and become extremely vulnerable about the fact that she hasn't had a lot of father figures growing up. And this is when it starts to get very interesting. She starts to cry. Zach doesn't necessarily say anything to like affirm her, but he does start to like empathize with where she's at. He tells her that she doesn't need to share anything that she's not comfortable sharing on TV. I think that we start to see Zach being really emotionally present and improving a little bit. I mean, not doing a lot more in terms of like the way that he could really empathetically rise to the conversation and really make sure that Kaity's feeling heard by like digging into the questions or like really asking her about her feelings.
That she seems like the clear front runner. I felt like even in the daytime portion of this date, I was really surprised with how much time they spent, or like how much time the show spent just showing us Zach and Kaity being cute. Like it just, they spent a long time on them. I don't know if screen time wise or whatever, it was different, but it felt to me like, I was like, wow, we're just spending a lot of time just looking at how cute Zach and Kaity are in a way that felt different from most one-on-ones. And we even got that portion of the daytime date where they're like kind of looking out at the view of Budapest, and they're talking about like, oh, we know the big stuff about each other, but not the little stuff. And Zach talks about like wanting to know more small things about Kaity. He's like, what's your favorite color? And
I know.
Like that,
I was like,
which was
Zach's
like
trying, but I'm like, not the right questions, right?
Exactly. It was like a little eye roll, but you could tell he was like, you know,
trying.
It was like a cute moment. I do think that that's a funny thing about this show is that, yeah, they just are missing so much of the quality time that you would have with people where you would get a lot of that small information from them, you know, over time. They miss so much of that, and they are forced to talk about the big things right away. So it did feel like that was a moment of like Zach really recognizing the weird situation that they're in. And so, yeah, there was just like a lot of cute stuff between them. I think that they just seem very compatible and very like, you know, just like on the same wavelength in a lot of ways. I think in the evening portion, yeah, I think he did an okay job. I wasn't like overly impressed. When people are crying or when a woman is crying, he does like understand that he is supposed to be sensitive to some extent. Like I think he gets that, and he's always gotten that from the beginning. And you're right, I do think that because it's Kaity, he is more yeah, he's just a little bit more present in the conversation, like really trying to like lean in and like kind of show her like, hey, I'm here, I'm like in it with you. I do sort of wonder if Kaity got what she needed out of that conversation, because he didn't actually really say anything about her complicated relationship to father figures. He didn't really dialogue with that at all. It did kind of make me wonder if maybe, I don't know, it's like he can be like, they're there, but then he can't actually have a conversation about like the hard stuff. Like that was one thing that I was thinking from this scene. But at the same time, I do think that generally speaking, he kind of he hates drama, but he loves a damsel in distress. Like, he loves when a woman cries about something that has nothing to do with him. You know, like when Jess comes and cries and she's like, I need something from you, he's like, oh, good God, get out of here. But when someone cries to him about like a past relationship or something that happened to them before meeting him that he has no, like, they're not asking him for anything and he has no responsibility over it, that's when he's like, oh yeah, I'm here for you. Like, he'll like really lean in. And in fact, I kind of think that he sort of thrives in those types of conversations, because it's kind of like the women are opening up about bad relationships to exemplify what Zach could be to them, and to exemplify like Zach, like it kind of gives him a bit of a like a white knight or a savior narrative to run with. And I think he loves that. Like, I think he really loves being positioned in that positive light. And so I actually think these moments when these women open up about something from their past, it doesn't throw him off in the same way, because to him it's like, oh, this is a positive. She's explaining like it was so bad in the past and it's so good now, right?
Totally. It does prop him up in some way, and I think this also exemplifies his age in dating. It's so hard because his journey isn't necessarily wrong. It's questionable. But when I was his age, I was dating all over the place too. Sometimes I was toxic. Sometimes I was an asshole. You learn from these experiences. And I noticed in the evening portion of him and Kaity's date, when they were talking about what they wanted from each other. And I liked that question that he posed to her, like, what do you want from this relationship? Where do you see us in the future? And she just started describing what she wanted, but I noticed that she didn't plug, like, it wasn't about Zach. It was more about what she wanted. She was like, I want a family. I want these things. I want someone that makes you feel this way. And Zach, I feel like you could give me those things. But it felt a little bit more like they were exchanging projections of a fantasy with each other. They weren't really getting to know each other enough. I do think that's a good sign of like kind of like dating when you're a little bit younger, or when you're dating and you are operating off of like what you want more so than like really getting to know the person in front of you. So I felt like when him and Kaity were talking, they were talking more at each other, and then they were kind of just like making the other person be like this avatar or like this representation of what they hope they could be. And it's so seductive to be in that kind of dynamic.
I noticed that too with Kaity when he posed that question. First of all, this was like a repeat of their conversation from their first one-on-one date. He asked the same thing, which is, what do you want? There's the same thing he asked on their first one-on-one date. She said the same thing. I want stability. I want safety. I want security. The same exact stuff she said the first time. So to me, I was like, did he forget that he already asked her this? Like, yeah, I was like, maybe he's just confusing all of the women, but like literally this is the exact conversation they already had. The first time she brought up her toxic relationship in her past, like she had like an ex that treated her poorly, and this time she brought up the father figures. So she had talked about a different part of her past in response. But you're right, I did notice that when she responded to that question of what do you want, it was, in fact, I almost felt like it was almost like, well, I just don't want what I've experienced before. And it was very focused on like protecting herself from the bad of her past, as opposed to your point, like co-creating a future with Zach and talking about like how their lives could commingle. So it did feel a little bit, I think the two of them think that they walked away from the conversation closer. Like I think they feel like they were closer after that conversation. But yeah, I agree with you that it did, I don't know that they really went that deep. Like her telling him about her past is not the same as them like creating intimacy and closeness from him truly understanding what she went through and her feeling truly heard and understood and seen, which I don't know. I mean, she may have said that. She was like, oh, I felt like he was accepting me, but I don't know. We didn't actually really see him really seeming to show any real understanding for what she went through, because what she went through is hard. It's really like, it was really, I'm sure it's really intense to lose two father figures over the course of your adolescence. Like that's a very intense experience. And to me, when I heard that, I was like, Okay, it makes sense why she really wants stability, because she clearly never had that. Like, the only thing she wants in a relationship is someone who will stay and not treat her like shit. And I was like,
Right.
oh gosh, poor Kaity. Like, so it all clicked, but I just don't know if that Zach was clicking. Like, it was all clicking with Zach. I just, to your
Right.
point, it was like, he was like, they're there. Like,
Right.
now we're close, right? Like,
Zach did demonstrate some empathy in that conversation in terms of like eye contact, and I could tell like, whoa, you really care about how Kaity is feeling, but it wasn't really building a lot of intimacy, like you said. It wasn't like they were both demonstrating some vulnerability where she opens up and then he opens up, and then they both kind of keep stacking that on top of each other, and then that creates trust, like real solid trust that you get when you've been through a person through like a lot of ups and downs. Instead, it did feel a little bit superficial. I think to Zach's credit, he did do more than I've seen him do for other girls, but we're also at that point of the season where we're like almost at hometown. So everyone in that circle of girls, all of them have a connection to Zach. So we are going to see him move a little bit differently than how he's moved in the past. I don't think that he's making huge strides, but I am seeing that he is getting really torn up about letting these girls go, because he can tell that like these girls are very invested in him. And I don't know if it's as much Zach or as much as they're just hanging a dream onto Zach and what they want Zach to mean to them. You know, like I noticed a lot of people getting very teary, very upset, just really, I think, wanting validation of Zach. And it's because he's so careful and reserved and specific in how he gives it. And when you're around someone like that, it's, you know, like you're not going to be your full self. You will sacrifice a little bit of authenticity to get that approval that you're craving and looking for. And with Kaity, she's demonstrated she will take the bare minimum because she hasn't received a lot of it. So she is okay with exactly what Zach is offering, which is a little bit more, I don't want to say superficial in a negative way, but it's very light. You know, it's not like you're digging deep into anything.
Because Kaity doesn't ask much from partners. Like, she's directly stated that all I want is like this bare minimum. Like, don't be mean to me. Like,
that's it.
Don't leave. Like, don't be mean to me and don't leave. Like, that's all she's asking for from a partner. And so she's really not asking for much. And so in that sense, I do really think that her and Zach are a great pair, because Zach is not giving much, right? He's not going to give very much. And, like, that's the thing that sets him off with any of the girls. It's like, as soon as any of the girls has a need, that's the thing that will make him send them home. And so Kaity doesn't ask anything from him. And even in this conversation, she cried. It was, like, an intense conversation, but she didn't ask anything from him. And I think that's why it works. And I think that's why, for him, he probably left the conversation being like, that was intense, but, like, we got closer. Even though I don't know that they got closer, but like I think that he probably left the conversation thinking that they did. And I think that's an interesting lens through which to see the following scene with the group date. We'll get into that.
Let's move into the group date, which we had with Kat, Ariel, Charity, Gabi. They go to a theater. They have no idea what's going on. They walk up to Zach. He is with someone that clearly looks like a magician of some kind. He introduces himself as a mentalist. And then he starts to, it's very uncomfortable. He sits them down and he asks them to, first he questions their readiness to be with Zach. And then he asks them to describe a word based on a trauma that they've, like, in my opinion, they've disclosed to a therapist, or he's getting some kind of producer notes about exactly what to say to make these girls break down, because he does it. So we go into each of the girls sitting down. He opens up a can of worms with Gabi, where he says that people are very confused when they're around her. It opens up this deep-seated fear that she has, that her ADHD makes it difficult for her to be in relationships. And then she spends the rest of the day crying. He speaks to Ariel, who has been presented as a woman of mystery, and how it's hard for people to get close to her. That really throws her off. Then we move into Charity. Really tough. He asked her to describe one word that was a part of her past relationship. It was infidelity. She immediately breaks down. And then we move into the last woman, which is Kat. We've seen her struggle since the beginning of the episode. It's hard for her to not get upset when she's not getting that attention that she's seeking. And he somehow pinpoints that she has wanted to walk away from this entire experience. And then the date abruptly ends and they kind of like separate and they have to move into the evening portion of the date where they can get a chance to like remedy their concerns with Zach. I didn't like that date at all. Like, I really hated how all of the girls, and they admitted this on camera to Zach, made them feel extremely uncomfortable. They hated how it made them insecure. They hated how it brought up something inside of them that they just weren't ready to open up about on stage with the other girls watching, with Zach watching. I felt like it was very similar to the therapy date that Clayton had in his season. They just didn't consent to the experience. It was like forced vulnerability, and it was forced vulnerability at a point when they're feeling so shaky because they want Zach to meet their families in hometowns the following week. So they're really clamoring for that rose as well. I wouldn't say he said anything in particular that like created this like bridge that they could really travel down for more vulnerability. But I do think Zach did like a better job. So I am looking for improvement constantly of Zach.
Interesting.
I know you don't feel the same way. I'm trying. I'm like looking.
Yeah, I know, I'm trying too. It's so funny because I feel like for me, when I watched this whole scene, to me it felt like more of the same from Zach. Okay, so like with the mentalist state in particular, first of all, my first reaction to this was like, I knew you would hate it, but I was also like, I kind of think Julie would be great at this job. Just like kind of, you just sit down, you look at someone, and then you just read them to filth, like read their deepest like insecurities. I'm like, this is perfect. Like Julie would be so, like your evil alter ego would be a mentalist.
Right. Yeah, like
right?
the side of my mind of my relationship coaching. I agree. I think I could have some kind of career mentalism for sure, but I was like, oh, the way that he did it made me feel so grimy.
I mean, yeah, it was definitely, to your point, it was like super weird that they didn't know that they were going into this type of date, idea. And like it was kind of like sprung on them. However, I had a slightly different read on this. To me, the thing about this date was, I don't know that it was specifically the fact that they were talking about their insecurities as much as it is that this date peeled back the layers of what we've been talking about for the last 3 episodes or so, which is that Zach's kind of no drama stance is actually causing these women to feel the need to bottle up and withhold their feelings and perform that kind of fun persona, right? Like, we know that the girls have been conscious, or we've been theorizing that the girls are feeling conscious of that they have to perform. We heard Kat last week kind of directly say like, or we not even say, she like was like crying to a producer or like freaking out, and then Zach walks in and she goes like, hi Zach, and she like kind of like changes her whole personality when Zach walks in the room. So we kind of have seen that these girls seem to be conscious of the fact that you can't cry in front of Zach, or if you cry in front of him and ask him for something, he tends to send you home. And so I feel like this scene sort of made these girls, like, forced them to be vulnerable, and I think they were all like, oh shit, if I'm vulnerable in front of Zach, he's gonna send me home. Like, crying and showing doubts, those are the things that Zach has sent girls home over, such as Jess, Bailey. So many other girls have got sent home over asking for validation and showing that they have any doubts. So many girls have got sent home for this. And to me, I think it became most clear with Kat in this mentalist date. First of all, I thought it was hilarious that, like, it felt like Kat was able to talk to the magician more easily than she was able to talk to Zach. Like, she could be more open with her feelings with the magician. Versus with Zach, she was like, I'm not going to tell Zach anything. I have to keep it in. I don't want Zach to know about it. But with the magician, she was like, okay, I guess I'll tell you my insecurities. So first of all, I was like, oh my gosh, this really says a lot, because Kat clearly had so much she wanted to say, but she's been trying to hold it in around Zach. And she even at one point literally says this quiet part out loud, which is, I can't actually say what I feel, because if I open up to Zach, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get sent home. I feel like I have to defend myself for being real. I feel like he's going to misinterpret my words. Like, she literally says this out loud, that she is worried about getting in trouble with Zach and worried that her being real about her emotions is going to get her sent home. And so to me, sure, there's maybe an element of being afraid of just generally being vulnerable on television, being afraid of, like, stirring up drama. She does say something like, people will think I'm not here for the right reason. So it does seem like she's also conscious about how she's going to be interpreted by other women in the house. But the idea seems to be like, it'll get back to Zach and I'll have to defend myself. And even not even just Kat, I think the other girls kind of said things along these lines too. You really see them all kind of panicking after the date. And I know it's hard to show your wounds, but I really think there is an overarching element here to these girls just knowing that showing insecurities, asking Zach for validation, asking him for anything at all is what gets you walked to the car. And because that's what happened with Brianna, that's what happened with Bailey, that's what happened with Christina, Anastasia, Jess. It's nonstop. And so to me, what this date revealed was that these girls don't feel safe in their relationship with Zach. I think that they really feel like they are walking on eggshells and any wrong move will get them sent home. And so I think that was really the reason why they were as panicked on that group date. Because think about it. If you're in a secure relationship, it's like, fuck, I'm like upset that like my wounds were exposed on national television in this group situation that I don't want to talk about it in. But I wouldn't be afraid that Zach is gonna send me home. Like I wouldn't be afraid of that if I felt safe in my relationship. I wouldn't be afraid that it's gonna jeopardize anything in my relationship. But the fact that they were all suddenly afraid, like Ariel even said like, oh, I was so secure in my relationship with Zach up until now. I'm like, why? Like it just felt like all of a sudden they were all scared that they were gonna get dumped because they talked about something hard.
And a lot of that too feels a little bit subconscious. Like I don't even know if they're aware of the fact that Zach isn't giving them so much, but they are aware that when they enter any conversation with Zach where they're looking for a certain quality of care, it will be limited in some capacity. How much he can give to them, what he, like his honesty and his straightforwardness. I do think that they appreciate that to some extent, but his straightforwardness is also like infused with a sense of like, I'm looking out for myself and what I want in the relationship. And because he really listens to his body, and I don't mean that in terms of like what feels good to him. It doesn't feel good for him to dwell in the negative. So then he seeks relationships or interactions or connections where, you know, to your point, like with the whole Kaity thing, very hard to talk about the father figure situation, but it wasn't about him necessarily. It was about something that he could do that would help heal that from her. They all sat him down. They all spoke very openly about each of their interactions with the mentalist and how it each both pointed to this core thing that they are dealing with, like outside of the show, outside of Zach. And I noticed, unless editing did something, he didn't really remedy it with a lot of words or empathy. It was literally just by like physical touch, quality time, a little bit of reassurance, but not too much. Just being like, I want you to be here, and hometowns the next week. Turned it around for me a little bit, where I saw more of what made him more compelling. Like, why are these girls so into him? He's clearly sweet. He's just naive, and he's really, really young. He does something that I think a lot of people do in dating. He's mistaken in chemistry for compatibility. And like chemistry is like a sparkly feeling that you have with someone, right? It's like exciting. It's, do I feel activated when I'm with you? Do I feel thrilled when I'm with you? Do we do fun things and we have these experiences together? But that is a dime a dozen. Like we can have chemistry with literally anybody. If we're drunk, if we try enough, if we, you know what I mean? There's so many ways to create it. We could be lonely. So we could really mistake someone as being like this thing that can give us what we want. But he's not looking for compatibility, which is like, how do we move through conflict together? Are we aligned on our values? Are we aligned with our family and not just aligned with my parents have never been divorced and your parents have never been divorced, because that literally doesn't mean anything. It's like, how can we talk about this situation and how can we really create and cultivate understanding between each other and help each other feel like really safe and seen and heard, like deeply appreciated and deeply valued as a person and deeply held. I don't think Zach is dating with compatibility, and that's what some of the girls are. They're not totally noticing because the Bachelor show is so shiny. It really is about like upholding the chemistry that you have with someone, and then because you know you barely get any dates with people before you go to the end and you get engaged.
So yeah, I think you're totally spot on about that. I think that is also contributing to like these girls feeling like they need to just focus on giving Zach butterflies and being like, you know, happy and positive. I think that's part of why they feel so focused on that. All of these girls, they're at this point, they all have a connection with Zach. Like he does actually really like these girls. And so you really see them just so focused on like, I can't let him know. Like I can't like cry in front of him, or I can't show this vulnerable side. I can't show him anything other than that positive side, because if he loses those butterflies, then I go home, right? If he doesn't feel like that feeling of whatever, like he kept saying it around Ariel, I think, like, every time I'm around her I feel better. That's the kind of girl I need. Like, every time I'm around her, you know, she's just so fun, she always makes me laugh. Like, he keeps saying that about Ariel, and Gabi too. And so, like, those are the types of, that's like the type of personality that he's looking for. That's the type of experience he's looking for in a relationship. And I think these girls know that. I think these girls, and that's why they're kind of walking on eggshells. That's why this mentalist date really throws them all off. They're like, oh shoot, we have to, like, we're getting forced to talk about hard stuff. And like, we know that Zach doesn't like it when we do this. And so I think that's kind of why they all start to freak out. I mean, I think, of course, they're all kind of individually triggered and re-traumatized, having to bring up their individual different issues. But I think that part of it all comes back to the fact that this is not a very safe relationship, and it's not a very healthy relationship where they feel like they can show their true emotions. I think they're all walking on a bit of eggshells, and the ones who excelled in this situation were the ones who were able to come to him and like kind of wrap up their thoughts from the group date. They were like, yes, this is what happened. Charity in particular, I noticed this. She was like, but this has nothing to do with you. This is all on me. You don't have any responsibility in this situation. Like, she was very clear, like, don't feel like this has anything to do with you. I'm not asking you for anything. You don't have to do anything. This is me. Like, she was so clear about that. And I think Zach was like, oh, okay, good. I can keep you because I'm not being asked for anything. Like, I think he really appreciated that. So as opposed to Kat, who, she did the same thing. She was trying to clean up what happened during the group date, the mentalist date. She was trying to clean up the fact that she had said that she had thought about going home, and she was trying to clean that up. But the problem with that was that issue did have to do with Zach, as opposed to all the other girls. Like, this one had to do with, like, she was feeling doubts in this relationship. And I think ultimately that's why she was sent home, because it wasn't something that she could say it has nothing to do with you, because it did have to do with him.
So when I feel like any girl asks him for anything else outside of that, like, I see myself in a relationship with you, and guess what? I'm kind of insecure right now, and I want these things from you. He looks back at the other girls that are not asking for that, and he thinks, well, it feels better with them. Like, I don't have to do so much of them, because he is dealing with a lot. Like, at this point of the season, it's a lot of emotions that he's dealing with. You know, he's like finally sending home the girls that he actually really cares about home. Yeah. So it's a lot for someone like Zach, who seems to me a little bit like emotionally immature, or still like needing to develop a lot. So because of that, I do think it makes sense that he just keeps wanting to keep around a batch of girls where it's as minimal on that, because it helps with his processing. So I don't think he's doing it to be malicious, or he's doing it with like a bad intent. I don't even think he's aware of it. He might look back on it later and think, oh my God, like, I really put these girls through the ringer because I wasn't able to like sort through a lot within myself, or have that conversation within myself. Like, I was surprised of Kat, because I thought for sure Kat was going to be someone that made it to hometowns because they had such an amazing date in the Bahamas, because like Zach was so attracted to her. But then her insecurities just really started taking over, because she wanted so much from Zach, and he was like, you want more than these other girls do, and I'm not willing to give it at this point.
I appreciate that you mentioned that it's like Zach is almost doing all of this unintentionally, and
he is.
You know, he's not trying to be malicious. And it really goes to show, like, I think often when we think about unhealthy relationships, we think that there's someone there who's like actively like, I'm gonna fuck this girl up, I'm like really gonna mess with her. So I don't know, but like most of the time toxic relationships, they emerge not really out of intentional maliciousness, but out of defensiveness, out of ego, out of lack of self-awareness, out of people not really taking the time to really think about how their actions are impacting their partner, which is exactly what Zach is doing, right? To your point, it's like he has so little awareness for how his decisions are making these girls feel, and how unsafe they are clearly feeling in these relationships. And so it's a good reminder that doing our own inner work, it helps us in relationships, but it also helps all the people that we encounter, right? It helps all the people that we enter into relationships with, because just because you didn't intend to hurt someone doesn't mean that you won't. And ideally, none of us wants to hurt anyone, and we should aspire to not hurt people. And part of being able to protect and care for the people we're with is understanding ourselves and being really, really honest with ourselves and knowing ourselves, knowing what we want, knowing what we have capacity for, knowing what we, whatever, being aware of how our actions are affecting them. And I think that's exactly what Zach is lacking in this situation. And I think that's also why I continue to feel so disappointed with him, because I just don't see him reflecting. Like, I really don't see him doing any, I haven't seen him grow or change. Like, when I was watching this episode, I just kept feeling like this feels like more of the same to me. I know you feel like a little bit like he's like improved a little bit in this episode, and I felt like all of these girls, I'm like, I think they're all gonna walk away a little traumatized by what happened here. Like, even though he's not doing anything directly malicious, like, I think it's really hard to be in a relationship and feel like you can't be your full self. And I think that has repercussions to how you move into your future relationships and what you expect from future relationships.
One of our commenters last week brought up the fact that, like, he's in a position of power, and this is a very uneven power dynamic that he's in. And these girls are catering to him because they want something from him. And that is love. That's a very lofty thing that we all desire. We're social creatures. We're hardwired for that kind of connection. And how he is in that power dynamic does say a lot about him as a person. He's not bad, but he's being rewarded for not introspecting himself deeply. He's rewarded for not reflecting, because these girls are contorting themselves to match into what he's looking for. And I know that we've had other commenters tell us, like, well, he is only going to be with one person, so he doesn't. Of course, these girls know that most of them, it's very likely he will break up with them, and that is true. But why can't we lead with, like, kindness when we're doing it? Like, all we're looking for of Zach is, like, some level of consideration and care. He's finally doing it to these group of girls because he likes them, but you shouldn't have to be head over heels with someone to treat them kindly. And he uses honesty in the name of, like, his selfishness, I think. And I think it's confusing for the girls, because when he lets them go, they all appreciate his honesty, but they leave themselves out of it. They're like, thank you so much for this wonderful experience. And he's like, yeah, I just had to do it, like, I just had to be really authentic to myself. It's not like, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate all of these things that you did too. He's like, I hope you understand why I had to do what I had to do for me, and I don't want to lead you on. Like, I would never want to do that to
image
you because I care about you. Exactly.
He's preserving his own image, actually. Even to the very last moment, it's still about him. And it, like, in addition to how you break up with someone, it also matters how you are dating them while you're evaluating them, right? I think that it's like Zach is going through the motions of being sweet, such as, be like listening to them when they talk about something hard, and I don't know, like giving good like presence in their conversations. He's going through those motions. I just don't think that he's thinking about overall how all of his decisions and how his approaches to conflict with other women have impacted how these girls, how safe they feel to bring up issues in their relationships with him, right? Like the speed with which he just turned it around on Jess. I'm sure, like, if I'm one of those other women, I'm like, oh my God, he was so confident in Jess, and then all of a sudden she was upset with him about something and he just sent her home. It's kind of like, it would make me feel like I really gotta make sure like, if I'm Kat, I'm like, I can't make him feel like he's getting burdened. That kind of thing. It's like thinking about the repercussions of your actions and really seeing, like, well, why is it that all of these girls suddenly felt unsafe after this date, this group date? Like, what was it? Was it something that I did? What can I do to help these girls feel safer? And I think that he's not doing any of that thinking. He's really just thinking about, like, to your point, like, in his own body, does it feel good for me? It's just so focused on himself and really not a lot of thought about the overall repercussions of each action that he's taking. And that's hard to do, but it's also, what we need to do. We look out for each other and just make sure everyone's okay, especially the people that you're dating. And so, there's like a level of kindness that I think is just not there. There's like a surface level kindness that he has, but not like a big picture thoughtfulness. I think that's what he's really lacking.
Excellent point. So well said. That about sums up Zach for this season. It's one thing to be aware of what feels good in your body, but it's another thing to only think about what feels good for you and not what feels good for the other person. You know?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
He did kind of make that date not like about himself, but he was like, wow, that mentalist was really tricky, huh? He didn't think about, to your point, oh my gosh, you're bringing up something that is clearly like a really big deal for you. How can I tend to this? He is trying, because he is trying to build connections with these girls, but he's doing it the way he's historically done it his entire life. So you know how we feel about the mentalist date? We're kind of split. I think it was not okay to go on. Kelly thinks that it was good, that we were able to like have some really good conversations, and Zach was kind of like forced into it. What do you all think? Let's talk down below.
I wouldn't say I thought it was good. I just thought it was interesting. We got
right.
out of it.
Okay, we need to clarify that. Kelly did not think it was good, but the juiciness that came from it was like essential to the conversation. Those are a lot of our thoughts about the group date. Gabi is the one that gets a one-on-one rose. It's very cute to see the girls supporting her, even though they're clearly devastated that they didn't get it after such like an intense conversation. We move into Greer's return. So Greer has had COVID, it seems like for 3 weeks now, and she has been, you know, traveling around the world, just like quarantining in hotels, I guess, waiting to feel better. She put on a great fit. She went to Zach's hotel room, just kind of ready to restart the conversation. And I don't think she thought it was going to end the way it did. You know, she was the first impression rose, and that carries weight in Bachelor world. Like, there is a lot tied to that. She was not thinking Zach would say that he had built other connections and that he did not see anything of Greer, and he had to listen to himself for the confidence that he was feeling in his interaction. It was devastating. We're not fans of Greer. To see her clearly have so much hope and to hold on to it every single day, that their connection was good enough to, like, you know, ignore the fact that she had been gone for so long. It was painful for her to actually see, oh my God, my worst case scenario is playing out in real time. He does not think that he can seriously commit to me. And I thought she handled the breakup beautifully.
I understand where you're coming from, and I respect it. The time is really of the essence, and we haven't had much of it, and we were robbed of it, and I just have to accept that. I really appreciate you being so honest and transparent with me, so thank you.
I want you to know that I appreciate you and I think the world of you, but
I understand. I've really enjoyed the time that I've spent with you, and I've grown a lot. So, thank you.
The way that she was a bigger person and how she thanked him for his time, his energy, the memories they built together. I wish that he tended to her feelings the same way that she tended to his feelings, because I think she did a really beautiful job in making sure that Zach felt great in the interaction, because it really threw him off when he saw Greer crying. Like, he was just like, oh my God, like looking like this, kind of looking back at her, like when she was crying, just not sure what to do about it, because he knew that she would be devastated. I just didn't think that he knew that it would be to that level, and he just couldn't handle it. If Zach wanted to, he would. He could have. Did they not have Zoom? Could they not have continued interacting with each other when she was quarantined? They couldn't do video calls during that time. If it was Kaity, I do think Zach would have made that extra effort of I want to still talk to her, right? And those conversations,
you're so right,
would have been really special, because you don't get to be physical with each other. It is like long distance almost, like you're interacting with someone on a screen, and you get to really dive into different conversations with them. He could have done that, but he didn't request that. So Greer never had a shot, and it just bums me out that like she was just traveling around waiting to have that conversation with Zach, and then he just let her go with like very little fanfare.
R.I.P. Greer, and you know, I think she'll
do well on BIP.
She'll be on BIP,
She's
right?
gonna be
she'll
on
be
BIP.
there, right? I think she'll do perfectly well on BIP.
So we'll see you on the beach, Greer. And then we move into the Brooklyn date. That date was it became so clear to me when I was watching it, like, wow, he does not have a connection of Brooklyn like he has with the other girls. Brooklyn is so sweet. They had a really cute little, you know, tour around Budapest, going to the hot tubs. The way that Zach explained it made it so unappetizing. He was like, it's like a giant hot tub in a subway station. I was like, ugh.
I was like,
I don't want any part of that. I don't want to be in
there.
Know. You know?
I mean, I'm a bit of a hot tub baby. I love a good hot tub. That's like my number one thing. Anytime I go on vacation, I'm like, I want access to a hot tub. But like a big group hot tub kind of situation was kind of like, ooh.
I didn't like it.
Kind of a lot for me.
He's doing a lot of random dates like that this season. And it was, like, to me, like, whoa, it's so clear that their connection did not progress as heavily as the other connections in the house. And they moved into the evening portion and they had the dinner. I mean, when she started talking about, like, how her dad had left her and how her grandpa had raised her and how she really wanted Zach to meet the family, and he walked away for a few minutes to catch his breath. If I was on that date, I would have walked away. No way is someone saying that to me. Like, after I opened up about something and he literally was like, have to take some time to think about it. And walks away from the convo.
Okay.
She was so uncomfortable. She was so clearly like, oh my gosh, what did I say?
Yeah.
Exactly. And it did show, like, you know, he was thinking a lot about how Brooklyn is taking this very seriously, what it would mean for him to be a part of it. And he made a really good point. Who am I to be in the house if I don't believe it's me? But I wish that he was able to talk a little bit more about, like, Brooklyn deserves this, and I don't feel like I can give it to her right now at this particular point of my life. He did say that a little bit at the end, where he was like, I can't give you the love that you want. But I don't know, the way that he framed it just kind of, like, excused himself from it, because he could if he wanted to. He just has to, like, push past it. He just has to, like, empathize with her. He has to, like, want to get to know her more. But I think it just really intimidated him to know that Brooklyn had a little bit more of a complicated family history, and just how much it would be meaningful for her to bring a guy home when she's had experience with not having a lot of stability in the house. So that whole breakup conversation to me was really sad, because I know that Brooklyn really held on to, I'm so happy that Zach told me that I am special and I do deserve something, but I felt like he really could have done more to really offer her that perspective and make her feel really good on the way back home.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think that he didn't like her that much all the way since their first one-on-one date. Like, I thought there was no chemistry on their first one-on-one date weeks ago, so I think that she's the kind of girl that he wanted to like, because she's, like, hot, blonde, like, very fun. She has that, like, really just, like, cool personality. She's exactly on paper the exact type of girl that Zach would want. I think the chemistry just, like, for some reason wasn't there, and he, like, really wanted it to be there. Like, I think he was like, there's literally no reason why I shouldn't, like, be head over heels for Brooklyn. And I mean, that's how I felt too. I was like, why aren't you head over heels for Brooklyn? But I think it just wasn't there. And I think this one-on-one date, I think he gave it to her because he wanted to see if maybe they could, like, you know, zhuzh it up a little bit, see if they can get a little bit of that oomph back in there. But I just think it wasn't there from the very beginning. Sometimes it just isn't. And so, honestly, I don't even know if it had to do with, like, what she brought up on that date. I think what she brought on the date made him realize, like, oh my god, she's got so much going on. Like, if I don't really feel it with her, I definitely can't bring her along. And, like, but I think he hadn't been feeling anything really substantive for her for a while. I think she's just so, like, hot and fun and cool that he, like, really wanted to like her, but he just couldn't get there with her. So, you know, that is what it is. But honestly, I kind of think she would make a good bachelorette. Like, I kind of think that she would be if they haven't chosen the bachelorette yet, which I don't know, I don't watch spoilers, but, like, if they haven't chosen the bachelorette yet, I feel like she's so great because she's such a fan favorite. I feel like everyone really likes her. Most people are pretty into her kind of like, you know, firecracker type of personality, and she's super pretty. She's got like a compelling story, and I feel like she is very deserving of the opportunity. So I think she would be actually a really good bachelorette if they haven't chosen her by now. She kind of went home early enough and didn't have like the strongest connection to Zach. So in that sense, she didn't have like the most reason to be the bachelorette in terms of like what happened with Zach. But I think that seeing just how much of a fan favorite she is, I feel like she would be such a good pick for bachelorette. I think a lot of people would want to watch her season.
I would say a lot of the girls from Zach's final 5, 6 are great. I
agree.
I think they're all wonderful girls, and he would be lucky to be with 80 of them. Yeah, like extremely lucky. Okay, so then we make it to the very end of the episode. It is the rose ceremony. I love that all of the episodes have been tying it up like this because it feels like very cohesive and contained. We see Charity get a rose, Ariel get a rose, and that's all of them, right? It was only those two?
Yeah, because Kaity and Gabi had gotten their roses already on their dates.
On their one-on-one dates. And then Kat walks away. Really sad breakup. She is obviously devastated. Zach is like unsure what to do in that situation outside of just like wanting to comfort her and say that it wasn't really anything about her. It was just about the other connections that he had felt. And then she like he sends her home. At least he walks her to the limo. It was tough to see because like I said at the beginning, I honestly thought Kat was going to make it really far, like a top 3 contender. Ariel really surprised me. She's a dark horse. And Charity was also surprised. She didn't think that she was going to get the rose either.
It was definitely, I was surprised to see Kat go. I definitely thought that she was going to get the rose, even though they had all the drama. I feel like everyone else cleaned up really well after the whole group date mentalist stuff. I think everyone cleaned it up really well. I think Kat was the only one that like showed that actually it had to do with her relationship with Zach. The thing that she was sad about wasn't from her past. It had to do with Zach. And so I think that's ultimately why she was sent home. I think Zach could recognize that out of all of these women, Kat is the one who is going to, have emotions and needs. They all are wonderful and have emotions and needs, but I think that Kat would be the one who would be asking him for validation, asking him for things, and asking him for things beyond what he's willing to give. I love our final 4. I love Charity, Ariel, Kaity, and Gabi. Those are like 4 great women. Like they're all so sweet. They're all really interesting and mature and kind, and I just really like all of them a lot. And so I think that Zach, to your point, would be lucky to end up with any of these 4 women. Predictions, I don't know. Do you still think it's going to be Kaity at the end?
I still think it's going to be Kaity. She is just giving such final rose energy, and I feel like out of all of these girls, he has the most connection out of them. Like how I think it's going to go is Charity's going to go home after the hometown date. And then after that, it will be Ariel, and then it'll be between Gabi and Kaity, because Gabi, if you notice at the mentalist date, she didn't have relationship trauma that she was unpacking. It was about something that she was struggling with her mental health. So like maybe she was perceived as a little bit more, as less like emotionally taxing. And I say that with a lot of quotation marks. I don't know how Zach is perceiving it, but she just seems like the kind of girl that I actually see him with. And Kaity seems like the kind of girl he'd want to be, like have as his wife. But like, Gabi would be someone that I would actually see him dating someone like her. What do you think?
Interesting. Very interesting. I think that sounds about right to me. I think it's really going to be one of those 2 girls. I just don't know which one he'll pick. But I think your analysis is pretty spot on. I would love for a swerve. Like, I kind of think it would be really cool if he picked Ariel, but then I would love that for Ariel. But I don't want that for her. Like, I want her to be with someone that's not freaking Zach. So, it would be cool to see her get, be the winner of this all. Like, it would be awesome to just see her get the crown, so to speak, but I just don't actually think she and Zach should be together. Like, I just think she should be with someone much more mature and, I don't know, just like self-aware than Zach. And so I just don't really want her to be with him. So yeah, let's see what happens. Let us know down below too what you all think. What do you all think about Zach's final four, and who do you think is going to get the final rose? If you've watched to this point of the video and you aren't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. We do this every week. We are doing Bachelor recaps for every episode of Zach's season. Next week, we have 2 episodes. We have Hometowns and then the Women Tell All Monday and Tuesday night. So you will not want to miss our coverage of this momentous occasion. So hit the subscribe button. And we will see you all next week. Bye.